The buzz around Tesla is more like the deafening roar of a 747, so if you're curious about a car like the Model X, well, we hope to demystify a little bit why this SUV is so unique and worthy of that buzz. The car we're testing is the Model X 100D. So it's the mid-range SUV. It's below the ludicrous mode P100D and above the 75D. And what that means is you have 295 miles of electric range, EPA rated range. And this car starts at around $97,000, and that's not including any federal or state tax credits. The X we're testing is the 3-row model and the one with the bench seat in the middle. You can get the X as a 5-seater with just the 2 rows, a 6-seater, captain's chairs in the 2nd row that don't fold flat, or the bench that we have, which has room for 3 passengers in the 2nd row and 2 passengers in the 3rd row, and all of those fold flat. At the start of driving the Model X, I was tracking every trip, how much energy it used, if the predicted range was accurate, and after a few days I didn't feel the need to do that anymore because the range was so accurate and I didn't have to worry about whether it was going to misguide me with how many miles I had on my trip. And even more than just around town, on road trips, the navigation system will figure that out for you. So you can plug in a destination and it will tell you if you have enough battery life to get there. And if you don't, it will guide you to a supercharging station, which is the fastest way to charge. And it will tell you how long it's going to take to charge to get that range to get you to your destination. What was most surprising about my week in the Model X was how I wasn't concerned about range at all. With 295 miles of range, I was able to commute, I was on daycare duty, run errands, and range just wasn't an issue. Now, part of that, though, is because we're in Chicago, and there is a massive network of chargers and supercharger stations where charging at the supercharger was not much of an issue. Now, the supercharging station is the fastest way that you can charge. We were typically getting about 140 to 150 miles of range per hour. The one by my house is next to a grocery store, and the one in the city is next to another grocery store and some shopping. So an hour to run errands while the car is charging is not bad at all. Now, if there was a Home Depot near a supercharging station, well, I'd be in trouble, but the car would definitely get a full charge. There are a bunch of little features that make daily livability so much easier that you think, why isn't everyone else doing this too? The steering wheel, for example, very simple, not many buttons, but this multifunction scrolling knob here, you can adjust the climate control temperature, the fan speed, the screen display, recent calls and contacts. It's information, features that you use a lot, and it's really easy access here at your fingertips. Another is with the X's air suspension. So you can be in the weeds in the very low setting, or it can be jacked way up with a ton of ground clearance in the very high setting. On the high setting and very high setting, you can even tag a GPS location. So when you hit the very high, it will have an auto raising location marker. So whenever you hit that GPS spot again, the suspension is going to raise off the ground. And that's if you have a steep driveway or you're going over consistent rough terrain. There are also driver profiles, which, while not unique, there are absolutely memory seat capabilities in other luxury cars, but in the Tesla, you can save up to 10. And whenever you make a little adjustment, let's say I move the mirror or I move the seat, a little pop-up on the screen shows, do I want to save that as my new default setting, or do I want to restore to the old setting? It's just a little feature that makes a big difference. Tesla's preconditioning of the interior works exceptionally well. It's been about 80 to 90 degrees here, and when the car is sitting outside, it easily gets to 105, 106 degrees inside the car. Setting the climate control through the app from inside the house, it will get to 73 degrees in 11 minutes, which is phenomenal. It does make a lot of noise from the outside. When you walk up to the car, it's just whooshing and you hear that blower motor spinning at 300 miles an hour, but it works. and it works really fast, faster than other electrics we've used and other cars that give you the ability to, precondition your interior. You don't see backup cameras like this anywhere else, and it's also because you don't see screens like this in many other cars. But Tesla is making full use of this screen with a high-resolution backup camera. And unlike other systems that are going to turn off after you hit a certain mile an hour, you can keep this camera on when you're driving at different speeds, above just cruising around in a parking lot. And it's useful in this car because the rear visibility is not great. This model has a fixed rear spoiler and the back window is very small, so rear visibility isn't great to start with. This camera makes a big difference in giving you an extra set of eyes on the back. The proximity sensors, on top of telling you how close something is, they conform to the shape of what you're around. So if you're pulling into a parking space, the blob of caution, do not hit this, forms to the shape of what you're approaching. And then when you get really close, it starts telling you you're 30 inches away, you're 25 inches away, you're 20 inches away, which is just that extra bit of context that tells you you're really close to something. In other systems, you just don't have that context of really how close you are to something until it tells you to stop. But this is just a little extra information that goes a long way into telling you just how really close you are. The X isn't without its quirks, and the doors are definitely quirky. They're all electronic, so they motor open and close. And then the rear doors are the Falcon doors. So those will swing upward, and they put on a great show, that's for sure. They are a wow factor of this, even if you don't want it. When I pulled up to a grocery store, they had a nice little barbecue out front and a bunch of picnic tables, and as soon as I pulled up and opened those doors, everyone turned and looked at me. And that's not the kind of attention that I want when I'm going to pick up some milk. And they're also just a little weird to live with. If you're parking in a parking garage and the structure is low, they're not going to open all the way, which is really smart. It's going to sense that there's an object above, and it's only going to open, so it doesn't hit what's above you. But then you're left with a height that you can't really get easy in and out access, and they do take pretty long to open and close. But they are a spectacle. The doors also feel a little flimsy when they close. It's not a solid, reassuring clunk. It almost feels like you're closing the door on an amusement park ride just before you take off. So we have the model with the bench row in the second row, and it's not the easiest to get into the third row. The third row is kind of tight. It's more for kids or smaller adults. I'm 6 foot tall, and it takes a little bit of work to get back there. The bench seat doesn't slide enough far forward to give you a ton of access, so you kind of have to climb over the wheel well here and make sure you don't fall into the seat. The bench seat is a little heavy too to get back, which isn't great. It's not unusable. I'm back here. It's not totally uncomfortable. My head is up in the rear glass area, but it's not the place that you want to be. You definitely want to call dibs to be in the second row. But if you are, there we go. Now it's locked in. But if you do end up back here, you have some AC vents, which is nice. But the second row is the place to be. It has a flat floor, a lot of leg room, a lot of headroom, and nice little skylights too in those Falcon doors. The doors close like you're sitting in a roller coaster, and the acceleration matches that. We clocked 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds with our RaceLogic V-Box GPS equipment, and we did the quarter mile in 13 seconds flat at 108 miles an hour. And that's quick, especially for the mid-range model. In the SUV space, the Tesla Model X's acceleration is most similar to a Porsche Cayenne e-hybrid, which also does 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. The e-hybrid, though, only has 14 miles of electric range, where the Tesla, you're looking at a full electric vehicle with, of course, the 295 miles of range. If you haven't driven an electric car before, driving the Model X is going to be a very different experience. There is instant acceleration when you hit the accelerator pedal. There's no downshifting. You don't have to wait for the engine's power to come on at higher RPMs. You're just off. And where that's most noticeable is when you're on the highway and you see a hole in traffic and you need to get there to make your exit. This has no delay and you're gone in a split second. Where the X isn't quite as impressive is in ride quality. It doesn't have the solid, reassuring composure that a $100,000 Land Rover or Mercedes does. It kind of crashes over bumps, and the firmness isn't adjustable. So unlike those other SUVs, you can't choose a comfort mode on these type of roads or a sport mode in other types of roads. The doors in the third row I can chalk up to being quirky, but what's just flat out disappointing about this car is its phone integration, especially with my iPhone. I just got out of a Honda Clarity plug-in electric that has Apple CarPlay, and with Apple CarPlay I can seamlessly use voice-to-text functions, podcasts, various music apps, and I don't have that here. Getting into this car was kind of like going back 5 years in phone integration technology. There's basic Bluetooth functions, but there's not great phone usage here like you get with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And it's disappointing because this touchscreen is wonderful. It's fast, it's high resolution, and Apple CarPlay is designed to mimic your touchscreen phone on a touchscreen, and that's where it works best. And it just seems like it would be a perfect match, but you just don't get that on the Tesla's touchscreen. Tesla's autopilot is probably the best execution of a semi-autonomous smart cruise control, where it has an auto steer function that keeps the car centered in its lane and will actually steer with quite a bit of steering angle around corners when it's set. There are some quirks though. On this car, even with my hand on the steering wheel, it kept reminding me to make sure your hands are on the steering wheel. And it is a hands-on feature. This isn't like Cadillac Super Cruise where they say you can go hands-free, though Super Cruise only works on certain highways. To activate autopilot, the cruise control stalk here, you pull forward twice. It is a system that works very well and is a must-use feature if you live in congested areas like we do in Chicago. It's not appropriate to call this car a 2018 model year. Rather, the Model X we tested was version 2018.32.4. And since we reviewed this car, Tesla's software update 9.0 has been released, giving a slew of new features. It addresses the rear view camera only having one view, now through software updates having a 360-degree visualization using all 8 external cameras that previously weren't being used. There's a new dash cam function, and the screen has been updated with more centralized controls. All the cold weather controls are now in one spot. Plus, there will soon be autopilot features that can suggest lane changes to follow the most efficient path of traffic. And that's perhaps the X's biggest advantage. There isn't another SUV that can improve as dramatically without having to buy an all-new car in the next model year.